Good morning and welcome to the next installment of the Esri Public Safety Webinar Series, Best Practices for Sharing Information with the Public. My name is Chris McIntosh. I'm the Director of Public Safety Industries at Esri, and I'm happy to be joined by a team of folks here at Esri who are going to present to you on various aspects of being able to share information from your emergency management organization out to your constituents and citizens during a crisis. Jeff Barani is technical lead for emergency management. Kevin Armstrong is one of our lead solutions engineers for emergency management and public safety. Paul Ross with our ArcGIS Online team, and Kelly Jarrow as well. So we have a whole crew here with you, and we're really excited about this topic. So the purpose of these webinars is to provide you an ongoing update on what's going on with emergency management and disaster response from our public safety team. The topics can be broad in nature or very specific to a single application or solution or another business partner's solution. We normally do these the first Thursday of every other month, so you can plan ahead to block out this time on your calendar. And our next topic will be an update on the extension of the WebUC ArcGIS extension integration into ArcGIS Online. I know many of you are interested in that. We also will include updates from our disaster response program, which is unfortunately always very busy. There's a lot of things going on in the world, and if we've done any special events, we'll give you feedback on how those went. We always want your input on topics that you want to hear about. That's how we select what we're going to do, and make sure that these webinars are both informative and a good use of your already limited time. So on to today's topic, best practices for sharing information with the public. Now, sharing information with the public is something that every emergency management agency is challenged with, whether it's sharing information about the incident itself, what's going on, how bad is bad, what do citizens need to know to take immediate actions for life safety or protect their property, what's happening with damage assessment, where is damage, if you've been evacuated, can you get back to your home, when can you go back to your home, simple things like, as you'll see in a large wildfire scenario, is your home okay, which is something that obviously is a very stressful situation for affected people. Where is debris? How is debris being managed? Where is debris located? Where is debris being taken to? How does that affect your ability to get in and out of a community? How can citizens help identify debris areas? What roads are closed? What shelters are being opened? This is always a key problem. How do you communicate with the citizens where they should go if they need evacuation and sheltering? What roads are open? What evacuation zones are available? That kind of dynamic information. What's the status of the shelter? Is it full? Should they go to someplace else? Has the shelter been damaged? That kind of information is always really, really difficult to share with the public in a timely manner. So we're going to show you some best practices for being able to do that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Jeff Barani, who's going to walk through some examples, and then we're going to do some demonstrations for you as well to show you how you can pull all this together. So Jeff, over to you.
Great, thanks Chris, and good morning everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So first of all, I wanted to start out and kind of think about, the things from a traditional perspective. We've moved beyond a paper map as the best way of getting information out to the public, either, during blue sky days or gray sky days. Obviously, this is no longer the most kind of portable way to share information. Oftentimes people still will try and put together a PDF and share, information, that way. And so what you'll see today is some, live applications that are dynamic, that can be embedded in your agency's website, that can handle large loads as the public, comes into your site to get, critical information about a specific incident, what they can do to remain safe, what resources may be available to help them. So just kind of wanted to stop for a minute and think, hey, how technology's evolved, how GIS has evolved, and we can now kind of move beyond a paper map to get this type of information out. And part of the challenge here is we've got to be able to provide the capability to share information about disasters to a broad range of folks, during a disaster. We don't just want that to be the GIS staff that has the capability to share this information, more broadly, or you may end up with situations like this. I appreciate the resourcefulness of the public information officer here in this example of, putting their finger on the map, kind of pointing to the evacuation route. But there's much better ways now with modern GIS technology to be able to share information and help to get this out, more broadly. So how can we teach our public information officers to leverage some of the new technology? How can we teach some of our outreach staff to be able to leverage the maps and apps and the power of the ArcGIS platform to help get information out in a more kind of consumable and digestible way? And so that's really some of the things that we want to hit on and talk about this morning. So let's start to look at some examples of what right might look like in terms of modern ways getting information and sharing information with the public. So here's an example from the state of Wisconsin during the floods that they experienced last summer. So a story map tour, in this case highlighting where photos were taken on the ground, immediately start to convey the magnitude and the extent of the damage that happened for this particular, flooding incident. And this is something that they shared. This is something that they're able to put together, pretty quickly. In this case, this was done from photos that were taken from the ground. This can just as easily be put together with photos from Civil Air Patrol and that were taken, in the air to help kind of convey the magnitude and the extent of damage. And this is responsive in design too. That's one of the big things that's about these modern applications, is they work well on smartphones and other applications, so people can get access to the information when and where they need it. Here's another example that I really like from a hazards perspective from the city of Seattle, and using story maps, in this case a tab story map, to share details on some of the hazards that the citizens may face there in the Seattle area. Here we're looking at earthquakes, but as you can see they've got tsunamis and liquefaction zones and landslides and other key elements to help kind of raise awareness of the public on some of the hazards that they may face and some of the things that they may do to be better prepared in case a large incident were to happen. So this is another great example that we wanted to share with you today. Another kind of common trend that we're starting to see is these know your zone applications. So here we have an example from the state of South Carolina and the various hurricane evacuation zones along the coast of South Carolina. Now this just happens to be the hosted web app that received the second largest number of hits in ArcGIS Online last year. Obviously with Hurricane Matthew and other hurricanes that impacted the east coast of the United States, this was a very popular application that was used last year. So folks can come in, either simply click on where they live or type in their address and get information on what hazard evacuation zone that they may live in, and allow public information officers to help convey, okay, what do you need to do if you live in this area, and what are some things that you can do to remain safe, where you may need to go, when you may need to evacuate, that type of thing. So another great example that we wanted to share with you. Here's an example from just earlier this week in San Jose and some of the flooding that they experienced. In this case, you can see that they did a good job of using the web application builder in a very kind of focused way to convey information on the flood, where there was damage, where the resources were, and the key thing here in my mind is where the evacuation zones, where's the either voluntary or mandatory evacuation zones in the area, and here a great way to share information with the public on the ongoing incident here, the flooding incident, and how that may evolve and change over time. So again, here a recent example from the city of San Jose. One of the standing information products that we have from our disaster response program is here the severe weather public information map. So we combine live feeds of information like weather radar from AccuWeather or storm reports. This is just from yesterday, as well as data from social media, because that's actually a really good indicator and source of situation awareness information, especially at early phases of disasters, help give us a sense of what's going on. So here in this case you can see a configuration of the public information map around severe weather incident. Next, I wanted to show you kind of a hypothetical example that gets into showing more details like resources that Chris mentioned at the beginning. So let's say, for example, that you had a large flooding situation in San Diego. This is, again, a hypothetical event along the San Diego River. And also note that you can put information that, like shelters that provide, displaced people a place to go. So this is another way of helping to get out information, quickly to the community to give them a sense of what resources may be available to help them. This is the type of thing that you might embed in your agency's webpage or provide out via social media, Twitter, Facebook, whatever the case may be. So this is just kind of another example, and kind of from a hypothetical perspective. And next, Kevin, maybe you can talk to us about this particular example here that you were involved with late last year.
Sure, Jeff, thanks. This is actually an application. This is the structure status public information map that Esri's disaster response team assisted in Sevier County in building last year during the wildfires right after Thanksgiving. And this application was the most viewed app hosted in ArcGIS Online last year. And this was a very simple application just showing residents the status of damage assessments within the county after the wildfires. So this was a resort area, so a lot of people had maybe a second home or not full-time residents, so a lot of people going on the web looking for the status of their home or loved ones. So this was a very, very simple map to make and push out, and immediately became very, very popular. We saw local news departments picking it up, showing it live on the air. This was embedded in CNN websites, Computer World, USA Today, etc. So it very, very quickly went viral. And I think the next slide here will show just the status of the app. So in ArcGIS Online, when you have an app hosted, you can see the usage over time. And this is very typical of a public information application in the time, during an emergency. You see these large spikes, usually correlated with an official press release or something like that. And you can see just within a few days, really within a week, this app had over 1 million views, averaging over 40,000 hits a day. So this really speaks to how these apps, people are craving this information. It's very, very popular, and but also these apps can go viral very quickly depending on the event. In the next slide, you'll see just an example of the parcel layer in this application, how many requests for the tiles. We tiled the parcel layer and put that in the app. And every time you pan and zoom, you're making a request to that tile layer. You can see 36 million requests during that period. So this kind of highlights a very important point about scalability and can your infrastructure handle this type of load during an event when if you have one ArcGIS server sitting inside that you're doing your internal work on, you have to think about what is our strategy for sharing this information in the public. What's the best way to do it so we can reliably get information out and keep that information up to date. So we'll go over now to the next slide here. I think we'll start our demonstration.
Oh, just a couple of things to share first here, Kevin, before we jump into the demonstration. So just wanted to highlight a couple of best practices here in slide form, and then Kevin will follow up and demonstrate that. So first of all, when thinking about what type of information do you want to share with the public, what is really kind of some of the data to go along with that? Is that information about the current incident, what's the current flooding extent or the wildfire perimeter, wherever the case may be. Do you want to start to convey, as in the Sevier County example, what's the damage that's been in the impacted area and start to convey that more broadly? Or where has debris been reported, across the road or that type of thing that may impact road closures? We mentioned, shelters and having that as a source of information to, as an example, some of the resources that we want to, highlight and make available to the public to kind of keep them safe. So all of these really kind of represent, different types of layers. And the good news is we have various posted feature service templates for all of this, information. So some of this is available when you go to create a new hosted, feature layer, and you'll see that demonstrated here in a sec. Our colleagues from our solutions division have a service catalog that really kind of powers many of the solution templates for a lot of the things that you see, here on this list on the left-hand side, and getting into looking at things like evacuation zones or evacuation routes. So the point here is there's a lot of good starter information that you can get going with quickly to start to create your layers with inside ArcGIS Online to make this available to the public in a scalable way. One of the things that has come out in some of the recent releases of ArcGIS Online is what's called hosted feature layer views. So basically what this means is we can have a feature layer, like damage assessment, for example, and create a separate view of that information that we may want to treat in a different way. So for example, maybe we want to have one layer for damage assessment that's being used by our teams in the field to go out and collect information. They're updating this information on collector or survey 123. It's coming back in real time, and this is what we're using to keep track of the information. By using the construct of views, we can create a separate view of the same layer and change some of the properties. So for example, you can see here in this screenshot that we've changed the sharing level for this information. We've got the editable version is only available to the organization, thus requiring a login, and the public view of this information is available to everyone, so we can put this in apps and don't have to require a username and login when people come in and look at this information. We can also restrict the types of things and fields that we want to share with folks, even change the symbology. So this is this first came out in the December of last year release, and some updates were made last night in the recent update, and Kevin will highlight those. But this is one of the new best practices that we wanted to highlight and make sure we emphasize and share with you today in terms of hosted feature layers, which are very scalable and can handle those large CNN type loads, as well as the ability to create views of this information, so we can change this and make this and share it in the appropriate way, and really kind of help streamline some of those workflows, and you'll see that in the demonstration here in a few minutes. Another thing that we wanted to highlight is the live feeds. I mean, oftentimes we find the public is looking for situation awareness type information, just like those in the Emergency Operations Center, and some of the data that we have available as a part of the Living Atlas, it includes a good collection of live feeds to help you get started. Hurricanes, recent earthquakes, weather warnings and watches, that type of thing. And what we call, this is called in the class of content what we call subscriber content. So you have to be logged in to see this information, but it doesn't consume any credits to view and access this information. It's just something that comes along with your subscription. No credits are used in these live feeds. But since you do have to be logged in, one of the things that we wanted to highlight is in some of the public apps that we have, like the Public Information Map template or the ArcGIS Web App Builder, there's a new checkbox that's been added that allows the owner of the item to basically be the one that's marked with accessing this information. So this allows us to provide these live feeds in public applications without having folks log in. So this is a recent update and another kind of key thing that we wanted to highlight with you today in terms of a best practice. So again, as I mentioned, many of the apps, story maps, Public Information Map template, ArcGIS Web Application Builder all have a configuration dialog for this checkbox to basically allow the owner to essentially provide the credentials for this information and have the public not have to do anything. They can just simply view the map. So it's another kind of key update that we wanted to highlight here. While we're here, let's talk about a couple of other best practices here really quick. Especially for public applications, it's good for the owner of that application to have a good profile. We want the public to feel confident that they're getting this information from an authoritative authoritative source. So some key things to highlight there are making sure you've got a picture, updating your bio that will show up in the profile, including hopefully providing some sort of contact information. So if folks have questions, the media perhaps, or the public, what's the right number or way for them to kind of get in touch with you. Another thing that we wanted to highlight here is your profile. So by default, your profile is only visible at the organization level. So setting this to public is important, especially if you want to have a group that has membership across multiple organizations. So for example, if we have an incident group that may be housed by the Emergency Management Agency, but we want folks from Public Works or Department of Transportation to have visibility into a common set of groups, it's important to set your profile level here to everyone or public so we can have common membership across those groups. So again, just another best practice that we wanted to highlight here during this morning's webinar. Another key best practice that we wanted to highlight are on the items details page. So there's two key things that are really important here. One, making sure that you have a good thumbnail. There's a couple of different options for creating thumbnails. It can simply be a screenshot of the application, or you can add in some additional branding for your organization in creating that thumbnail, as well as a good description of that information. And the reason why this is important is that when you share this information via social media, those two elements are picked up automatically when sharing the link. So for example, when I tweeted out the link to this particular flood public information map, you can see here when I tweeted it automatically picked up the thumbnail and the description that I had set in the items details page. So this is done from the Twitter side, as well as when sharing information via Facebook, where if you were to paste a link to your application that you want to share with the public on for your public information map again, we can see that information of the thumbnail and description are picked up automatically when sharing that link, and so that's why it's extremely important to follow some of these best practices and and keep these up to date. So again, these were just some of some example applications that we wanted to share with you that hopefully provide some inspiration, as well as a couple of details on some of the updated best practices that have evolved with recent updates in ArcGIS Online. And now we'd like to turn it over to Kevin Armstrong, who can take us through a demonstration of some of these best practices. So take it away, Kevin.
All right, thanks, Jeff. What I'd like to do is just kind of start with a scenario that's actually not too much of a stretch for the southeast here. We just had some severe weather roll through the area here in Charlotte last night. And what I'd like to do is just use that as a scenario to share information with the public, walk you through some of these best practices that Jeff described. So what I'm going to do is start with the idea that we've had several road closures, and I need to send some folks out in the field to collect this information with the end goal of providing an application to the public so that they can see in real time when this information is collected and the status of road closures around them. So to begin this workflow, we're going to start in ArcGIS Online, and the first thing I really need is data. So if I don't have an existing layer of road closures, I want to just start from scratch, we provide you with a lot of templates right out of the box in ArcGIS Online. So I can just go up to the Create option in my content and say I want to create a feature layer. And what this does is it loads all the existing templates that we've put into ArcGIS Online. Now this is an expanding list. It grows with each release, and we have it broken down kind of by industry here on the left. So you can use any one of these templates as a starting point. The other options are grabbing an existing layer. So I could, if I have a separate road closure layer from a previous event that's already in ArcGIS Online in my organization, I can just select that item. Or maybe I have a URL from an ArcGIS server, whether that's mine or someone else, and I can use that layer as a template. Basically, I would just ingest the schema, not the data, but just the fields and the settings of that service, and start and create an empty service for myself. But I'm going to start with our templates here. I'm going to go over to public safety, and we can see some of the options you have for damage assessment, debris, kind of that list that Jeff talked about earlier. And at the bottom is road closures. So this is, I'm just going to walk through the steps here. I mean, it's very, very simple, wizard kind of driven display. And I can choose the features. So this template has 3 different layers: road blocks, which is a point layer; closures and detours are actually a line feature class. In this case, I'm just going to select the top 2 and go to next, and I can set the extent of this layer. For me, I'm just going to zoom into the Charlotte area, and we'll use that as the extent of our layer. And then I'm going to give it a name. We'll just call this Charlotte Road Closures. And it automatically grabs the tags from that service, that template. It populates the summary as well. And I'm going to hit Done. So what this does is it's spinning up a hosted service in ArcGIS Online using that template as the schema and fields and symbology, everything related to that template. So when I go into the details page, I can see it's automatically created this service. It's owned by me. And you can see the size, 0 kilobytes. There's actually no data within this. So if I go to the Data tab, we'll see 0 features, but you see the schema that's already there. Right? This is the schema for this particular template. So I'm just going to go and turn a few knobs and dials here just to get it ready. I'm going to disable time on this layer. I'm not going to be creating a time-enabled app. And I'm going to go through and we'll just go over to the settings here and see, you know, this layer has editing enabled, and it also has editor tracking. So I can keep track of who created the feature and who last updated it. So this is already there, ready to go for me to start using. So the first thing I'm going to do is just open this and add it to a new map. So if you've worked in ArcGIS Online before, this is a fairly familiar workflow. I can zoom down to my location, and you'll see I have 2 feature services in here. I have road blocks as a point and road closures as a line. So I can begin to just do simple things like I can click on the map, add a road closure in, do some very simple editing, and fill out, again, we have domains set up, so we have pick lists automatically available to you depending on what you're trying to fill out. Are these active, yes or no? Again, you can go through the schema and see the options that are available for you. And of course, editor tracking is turned on, so it's automatically grabbing that information. All right, so what I'd like to do is, in my workflow, is now that I have this template created, what I want to do is get this data into the hands of my field workers so that they can go out into the field and begin collecting this information. So with live data, some of the simple things that we always want to do, we always want to set a refresh interval for the layer so that everybody's automatically seeing the latest update of data. There's no chance that they're seeing old information. So I'll set the refresh interval. I can change the base map as well. Just depends on what my workers in the field need. And I'm going to go ahead and save this. We'll call this our Charlotte Road Closure Edits map. We can put some tags in there and save this map. And what I'm going to do to make this accessible to Collector, I have a group set up for the webinar. So I'm going to share it with a group. And when I share it with that group, it's going to tell me, hey, do you want to update the road closures feature service you created as well so that everyone in that group can see it? And yes, I do want to update the sharing. And I'll hit Done. So now, our normal workflow is once I have this created, I can go over to, let me bring up my phone here, and I have Collector up and running. And now that I've saved that, see, I have our Charlotte Road Closure Edits map. So I can open that up. And it automatically zooms to my location. If I zoom out a little bit, we'll see the location that I already entered on the map. So start our normal workflow. Again, I can go in, have my folks in the field enter information. So for location, Pineville Matthews Road. Nice feature on iOS there is you can actually speak and it'll put that to text. Direction of closure, again, very simple workflow. All this is part of the template, so you don't really have to do much configuration out of the box. When you start with that template, you're up and running immediately. And then I can use a location. I can, let's move this down the road just a tad and submit. So once that's submitted, my web map automatically updates and I can see the points on there. So this is, out-of-the-box functionality, part of ArcGIS Online. So what I'd like to do now that I've enabled this data flow to come in from the field, now I need to come up with a workflow to get this data out to the public. Now, what I don't want to do is just hit share on this web map and make this map publicly available, because this service has editing enabled on it. Even if I disable in the web map, I don't want that service out to the public with editing enabled. What I want to do is go back to my content and we can talk about the new view functionality. So if I go into my feature layer here, the Charlotte road closures, on the right hand side we'll see this button here called Create View. And what this allows you to do is spin up a version of this editable layer that is read-only. So Charlotte road closures, we'll just call this Public View. And it automatically grabs the tags and summary from the template. And I'll hit OK, and we'll open that up. So this is spinning up, basically it's ingesting not just the schema, but also the data from that parent feature service. So if I go over to the data tab here and see roadblocks, I'll see that data comes over with it. So this view is synced back to that parent feature service that my editors in the field are updating. So every time they update that service, that data is pushed to this read-only view. It's a very useful way to create that read-only version that we can push out to the public of that data and still have it linked to the data that's being collected. So once I've created this view, I'm going to go ahead and open this and put this in a new web map. So this is my view. So I have that same layer in here. I'm going to keep the same symbology. So when I click on this, we'll see all that information still in there. But what I'd like to do is, in this view, I'd like to remove some of the fields and maybe even potentially filter some of the data that's pushed out to the public. So instead of just doing a one-for-one push, all the fields and all the features from that collector map are pushed to the public, I have the ability now, with the update last night in ArcGIS Online, to go and set a view definition for this data. So maybe I don't want to push out all the roadblocks, maybe just the ones that are full road closures or that are only active or begin after a certain date or within a certain time interval. So I can do that with the Define Features option here. It basically just allows me to create an expression and say, let's do everything where, start is, in the last one day or something like that. So really a lot of flexibility in how you can push this data out and limit what actually shows up to the public. In this case, the only thing I really want to do here is define the fields. What I'm going to do is turn off this editor tracking because I don't want usernames showing up in my pop-ups. So when I hit apply and now I look at that data, we'll see that editor tracking, it doesn't show my username and when it was last edited. So very useful to be able to filter this data. And since this is live data, the other thing, another best practice is always set the refresh interval on your data so that every time if this map is sitting open on someone's monitor, it's constantly going back and grabbing the latest data. So we're assured that all users are seeing the most recent information. I can go in and change the base map here, something nice. I can use one of our vector base maps. And what I'd like to do is also configure the pop-up. This is something, as GIS folks, we're kind of used to seeing the field name and value list. But for the public, that's not something we really want to show them. Things like object ID or things that really only make sense to us GIS professionals. So what I'm going to do is go in and configure this pop-up, and I'm going to use a custom attribute display. So what I'm going to do is, if we see the list here now, I'm going to configure this and say, we'll start with our location description field. And we'll say this, which is basically the road name, and we'll say this field will be closed from, and then I can choose another field. We'll go down to our start date. From here, from this start date to our end date, period. So I'm basically constructing a sentence with the values from our feature class. So again, much easier for the public to consume. So direction of closure is, and then we can add in our direction field. And then maybe we want to do some things like maybe bold and underline the name of the road, simple things like that. Hit OK. And now I have a nice clean pop-up that's very, very simple for the public to read and digest. So now that I have my pop-up configured, I have my refresh set, what I want to do is now save this map. This will be our Charlotte road closures public map. We'll just add some tags and save this map. So now that I've saved it, this is the map that I'm going to share with the public. I don't have my editable data in here. I have my view. So I can rename these here just to something a little more readable. Roadblocks and road closures. Go ahead and hit save. And now I want to make this available to the public. So what I'm going to do is share this map, share with everyone. And this is going to say, hey, that view layer in there isn't shared with the public. We should update that. So we'll update the sharing of just the view so that the editable layer is still not shared with the public, just this view of that layer, that read-only view. So I hit update sharing, and now what I'd like to do is, instead of just, I don't want to push out a web map of this, what I'd like to do is bundle this map into one of our existing web app templates. And I don't necessarily want to just share a web map publicly. It's not necessarily a best practice. So what I'm going to do is hit create a web app, and this will show me all the templates I have available to me as part of ArcGIS Online. So I can use our configurable apps here. We also have Web App Builder as an option. It just really depends on what information you want to show, what functionality you want to have. In this case, I'm just going to push out public information. So we have a public information template. So I'm just going to select that and hit Create Web App. We'll call this our Charlotte Road Closures app. Additionally, you'd want to add a summary, something a little more detailed than what I'll type, but do as I say, not as I do, I guess. So this will launch us into the configuration page for our public information app template. So we get a nice preview of what the actual app will look like. So we see the information, we see the legend, the about layer. So this is kind of our preview. As we design the app, we can see those changes made. So I don't have a notes or a swipe layer. I don't have before and after imagery. So I'm just going to go straight to the detail page. And we'll call this our Charlotte road closures. Let's just add, since this is actually is going to be public, we don't want any confusion, we'll say demo only. And then I'm going to add a summary to this, just some descriptive text for the public to see. If we need more information, I can just paste some text in there. I can add a logo, maybe a logo for my city or county or organization. So I'll just paste a logo in here and set that. So again, and then all I have to do is hit save here, and this will update my preview, and I'll see what this app is going to look like to the public. So in my About tab, you see I have that text, my Esri logo, and I can continue through with my configuration options. So what default panel do I want to show up? Legend, About, or the layers? I can make it the About panel. And then I can enable and disable all the features of this app. There's a lot of nice things like a home button, or maybe I want to hide one of the panels like a layers panel. I don't want people turning layers on and off. I just want them to see the information that I have in the map. I can just disable that. So a lot of nice options in the application. We can do a splash screen, so when the app loads, we can have a nice little splash page with, maybe in the case of Sevier County, we actually had a splash screen that said, this app is updated as of this date. The next update is planned for, a certain time or date based on, when the next press release was going to be. Again, base maps, which ones I want to be able to have people be able to switch. Then we have our social media options. So if I want people to be able to view social media like Instagram or Flickr photos, I can add keywords in there. When do I want them to see? Again, each social media option is a slightly different in the content that it provides, but Flickr being photos, Twitter as well, with webcams, YouTube, etc. But once I've done that, I'm just going to hit save, and this will save the app. So this is what it's going to look like. The About tab loads first, so I have my contact information and my descriptive text, my logo, etc. But I'm not quite done yet. What I want to do is close, and this will take me back to the details page of the app. And Jeff mentioned earlier that when you share this application, whether it's via social media, Twitter, Facebook, etc., you want to have some nice details written about the app. And one of those is the thumbnail. So we don't want to use the default thumbnail. This gives us an option to choose our own thumbnail. So I've basically just taken kind of a screenshot of this app and reduced the size of it and upload the thumbnail. So I have that here. So now when I publish this app, this thumbnail is what users will see in the social media page. And of course I can update the road closures text. So that information will show up as well. So again, just some very simple best practices to use when you're sharing information with the public to make sure that this information is looking nice and clean and very, very professional. So now when I view the application, I have my public information map, and when I go to my share button, you'll see the embed link is automatically there, a map link is there, but if I go to my social media, like say Google Plus here, you'll see the preview. Here is that thumbnail, again, showing up in that post. So again, very important, you want to have some nice looking content out there. So now that I've got this map out, it's public, we can see it's refreshing. I have a nice pop-up enabled, very readable for the public. What I'd like to do now is, since we actually had some storms in Charlotte, what I'd like to do is update this map and add some of our live feeds to it. So what I'm going to do is go back to my content and go back to that public map of road closures. Now open that map up. And what I'm going to do is share or go and add some storm or weather related data to this map. So I can just go in any web map, in ArcGIS Online, I can just go to Add and say Browse Living Atlas Layers. And this is available to, to all ArcGIS Online users. And under Categories, I'm going to scroll down to Earth Observations. And this has all of our live weather feeds in this. So whether it's earthquakes or hurricanes, wind and weather, all this information is available to you out of the box. It's live updates. So I'm going to add stream gauges as a layer, and I also want to add storm reports. Add that as well, and close. So now I'll zoom out just a tad, and you can see this is the live layers. Again, these are storm reports. I mentioned there was some storms that came through Charlotte last night, so we had some high winds. These are windstorm reports, hailstorm reports. And this live feed, you'll notice, that the pop-up is already configured for me, very readable, ready for the public. So I'm going to add this layer in, and what I want to do is just make sure, again, this is live data, so I'm going to set my refresh interval to make sure these are updating and show the latest information. And I'm going to go ahead and save this map. Now I want to go back to my public information app, and we mentioned earlier, Jeff mentioned that those live feeds, those Earth observations, require an ArcGIS Online login to view those. So if I put them in this public map and somebody which is feeding this public application, if somebody opens that up and they're just viewing the application, they're not going to have the credentials to see those layers, so it's going to ask them for a login. So the way to work with that is to just hit Configure App, and we've added a new feature to these web app templates. You'll see it automatically pops up here on the left. It says, hey, there's subscriber content in here. There are layers that require a login. So what I need to do is basically just click the checkbox, and I'm telling the app that when someone opens this up, don't ask them for a login. Use my ArcGIS Online credentials as that information to pass to that service so that they don't have to log in. Now this is subscriber content. This does not consume credits. So really I'm just kind of providing a pass-through to my users so that when they open this up, they can still see those feeds, but they don't have to log in. So very, very simple workflow. I can just hit launch. Now my public information app will come up. I'll have the live feeds in there, and I won't need to log in. And we have some nice looking data in our public app. So the one thing you might wonder, okay, well, how does this work? We can go back now and kind of close the loop from a data collection side. Is now I'm back in Collector looking at that editable feature layer. And so, okay, let's go and create a new row closure. We'll call this test road. And we can put some information about closure. It's not a full closure. What's the direction? Again, all those things that are in our pop-up we'll have in here. When does it start? When does it end? And of course, I could go back to my web map and limit the fields that my data collectors see if I don't want all these fields being filled out. We can just say, okay, we'll use, let's move this down the road here and hit submit. So I'm updating, that data is pushed, and you'll notice our web map, our public web map, automatically updated. I have that refresh interval going. So test road will be closed, direction closer is west. So out in the field, as that data is collected, it's being pushed directly in to my editable layer, but I also have that public view that's automatically syncing and pushing that data out to my public app. So we kind of close the loop. Now we've got a data flow, a nice, really clean data flow from my field workers to the public without some of those requests that we had from users saying, hey, how do I get this editable data out to the public, but I don't want it to be editable when I share it publicly. So that these new features really give you some nice workflows to tackle that request. That was a big request we had from a lot of users, and we met that in December with the views, and then last night we added even more functionality around that with the ability to filter that data even further, whether it's attributes or what attributes show up, or filtering the data with an expression to only show certain features. So very nice clean workflow. So I'm going to close this out here and just finish with a real quick demonstration of, Jeff had mentioned earlier about some Know Your Zone applications. That's something that, hurricane season isn't too far away, and a lot of agencies may be wondering, how do I share information with the public in more of a preparedness role, not necessarily road closures or damage assessments, which might be more, with the recovery side. So what I have here is just a very simple polygon layer of evacuation zones. So I have a zone and a website for more information. And what I'd like users to be able to do is just simply give them an app where they can enter their address and find out what zone am I in. Right, so this is evacuation zones. We have a nice pop-up here. What I'm going to do is configure this really quickly. And we'll configure this pop-up again. We'll make it more public friendly, do a custom attribute display. You are in, and then we'll use our zone. And for more information, check our website. And then the website, we actually have a field in here called evac URL, which is our website. So I'm going to create a hyperlink when that text and use that field for the hyperlink. So hit set and OK. So now when I open this up, you're in Zone B, check our website. I have a nice hyperlink. It just links to any website that I want to enter there. So once I have that done, I can just save this web map, call this our Know Your Zone map, give it a tag. We'll just call this preparedness. Save that map, and I'm going to share it. And this I'm going to share publicly, and it'll tell me, hey, this evacuation zone layer is already publicly, so I'm going to create a web app. And this time I'm going to go over to Web App Builder. And this, we'll call it the Know Your Zone app, and we'll get started. This launches Web App Builder for us. And we can select from a couple different themes. I'll just select the Launchpad theme here. We can configure colors and layouts of widgets. In this case, I'm just going to go straight through and add a widget that users can enter their address on. So in our widget selection, again, we have a growing list of widgets here. I'm going to use the Near Me widget. And what this allows people to do is enter their information and find out what polygon they're in, what lines or points are within a certain area of them. And I'm just going to configure the widget. I can call it Know Your Zone. The geocode settings, so by default we're using the Esri World geocode service. You could use your own geocoder if that's something you have access to and want to use. So some very simple search options. So I'm going to set the layers that I want to search on. So I'm going to do evacuation zones. If I had multiple, I could select those here. And what I'm going to do is say only the selected layer will draw on the map. And also, I'm going to only return the polygon that is within the point that I'm returning. I don't want to buffer this particular search. So I hit OK. And what I can do is click this nice button here. And what this will do is automatically launch this widget when the app is loaded. So I can go ahead and save and show you when I hit Know Your Zone, I can just type in my address here in Charlotte. and it automatically puts a point down and returns the zone that I'm within. You are in zone B. For more information, check our website, and I have that URL again. So again, very simple app to use and deploy. We can also, again, this is Web App Builder, so this app is responsive. So whether that's on an iPhone or a tablet or an Android phone, again, this is all responsive and works across multiple devices. All right, so with that, I'll turn it back to Chris to wrap up.
Thanks, Kevin, and thanks, great presentation. So next steps. Next steps is for you to explore the resources presented in this webinar. There's a lot of great information there, a lot of tips and tricks on how to build these kind of things. So now it's up to you to go and try it out and let us know if you have any questions. Our next webinar will be Thursday, May 4th on, as I said earlier, what's new with WebUC ArcGIS integration and extension. Please visit our public safety webinars page. This webinar and all previous webinars are recorded on there where you can go back and look at other topics, or if Jeff and Kevin said something that you wanted to go through again, you can look at the recording at your leisure. Let us know if you have any questions. There is our contact information. Please take that down. Follow us on Twitter at GIS Public Safety and at EsriDRP. Lots of things on there, especially regarding current events that we're supporting or helping out with, and it's a great way to stay current with the latest best practices. Plan to join us in San Diego. The National Security and Public Safety Summit is a pre-conference to the Esri's International Users Conference, which focuses specifically on public safety and national security subjects. Lots of great speakers, lots of speakers from the emergency management domain, and I think it would be well worth your time to come to that, followed by the Users Conference with all of the workshops and SIGs, and of course Jack's plenary on that Monday. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Paul, who's been answering questions, and he's going to let us know some of the ones that he thinks have a broader scope, and he's going to talk about those so you can hear what your peers are asking and hear the answers. Paul?
Okay, thanks, Chris. So a couple of things that came up. One of them is something actually we're going to share a couple of links afterwards with all you guys. And it was really about where can I learn more about the new features that ArcGIS Online updated last night. We talked, the guys have demonstrated a couple, we've talked about a few, and we'll share two links. One is, of course, the what's new thing that we do with every release, and that'll highlight some of the big things that we've got and give you the links to the detailed documentation on those. The other that I would point out, and it's probably just as important anymore, is all the blog posts that we do. We have a great team of developers and product managers who are working on the ArcGIS Online product, and kind of whoever is the expert will do a blog post now. So last night we republished a number of them, and we have a number of them planned, so definitely check out the blog posts. Two other things came up. One is related to the high availability best practices for feature collections and hosted feature views. And there was some questions around if there's a maximum of 250 requests at a single time. I wanted you to know that we definitely have an option to configure the feature services for high demand, and to ensure that editing, first of all, you need to make sure that editing is disabled, and there is online some best practices around that. Filtering should also be removed, and ideally there's less than 8,000 points or 250,000 vertices. So these two requirements, they're easy to configure. We have a number of other things we can configure that with that, and best practices around those. So I think I'll put together the link around best practices and share that as well. And then the final question was about, I'm assuming it was related to the outage that we had earlier this week, and a failure of one of the Amazon S3 instances. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for their patience as we worked through that outage to restore all the maps and services and applications. And I also wanted to assure you that ArcGIS Online is completely resilient. It's well architected. It's backed up. It's redundant. And events like this are extremely rare. We have not actually had any kind of an outage like this since 2011. At this point, we're confident that everything's back up, and actually no data was lost anywhere. So this was definitely related to the one I'm sure everyone has seen on the internet. It affected many, many systems. It was a widespread impact. It was with Amazon's S3 system that we use for storage of everything from tiles to features to well, I mean, just about everything. We do have some action items though. Although I've said that the system is redundant across data centers and within Amazon's regions, there were still failures, and where it wasn't completely failing, it was basically a little bit non-performance so that you couldn't actually use it. So we are doing two things. We're going back and looking at that complete architecture. We're looking at Amazon and other areas where we can improve that kind of engineering. The SLAs around those kinds of services are extremely high, better than 5 nines, and so this is pretty unusual that something like this has happened, yet it did, and we're on it. We're working in engineering and working with Amazon on that as well to see if there's some things that we can improve upon. The other area that we're definitely going to improve upon is communication with you guys, like our users. We have the status.arcgis.com page, and you can subscribe to our RSS feeds there, but we're also looking at email and other methods for communicating out when we get to, or should we ever get to, these kind of outages again. So, so engineering, communications, working with Amazon around that, I think we'll be in good shape. And again, I apologize for that. We got it back as quickly as I can, and I don't ever expect that again. So with that, thank you very much for attending today, and we will see you next month.